This is a service to
Strayatrains.
stopping all stations direct to
Strayatrains. Welcome back to Strayatrains. In this video we're going to take a look at the ins and the outs of the Sunbury Line. Let's start off with an overview. It is served by Metro's Comenge and Siemens fleet, but on the rare occasion you may see a HMT running not in service to or from Calder Park for Stablings, and maybe next year in 2023 we might see some HMTs in service on the line. It is a total of 18 stations long and 11 of the stations are Sunbury Line exclusive stations. It serves Melbourne's northwestern suburbs and is part of the northern group on our rail map, giving it the colour yellow. The line code is SUY and the down service terminations are Sunshine, Water Gardens and of course Sunbury. Heading on to the service note, starting off with the loop direction. All up services on weekdays start off as Flinders Street via loop services, and then after the switch at about 12:30 PM all the suburban destinations run via the Sid Loop. On weekends, all services throughout the entirety of the day run to Flinders Street via the loop, which means all down services are therefore direct services to the down termination. However, most likely this will apply to weekends, but with more loop works likely to be common in the future, we may see more Southern Cross terminations as the new termination, while Sunbury services don't run via the loop, which could really change things up. However, when city platforms are used, Sunbury services typically use Flinders Street platforms 4 and 5, Southern Cross platform 11, the City Loops platform 3, which means it's part of the Northern Group. Also, Sunbury services do not stop at South Kensington, even though the PTV app and PIDs and whatnot say, stops all except South Kensington or Limited Express. There are no platforms in South Kensington for Sunbury services to stop at, so it is kind of weird that they say that, but technically it does run express on the side of South Kensington. The only time that Sunbury services run real express services is during peaks times, where some Sunbury services run express from Footscray to Sunshine before stopping all to Sunbury. In terms of the frequency, during peak is pretty good, every 7 to 15 minutes to Sunbury, and then even more common to Water Gardens in terms of services. However, on weekends and off-peak on weekdays, there is a 20-minute frequency to Water Gardens, and only every second train stops at Diggers Rest and Sunbury, giving a whopping 40-minute frequency for those two stations. Whilst Bendigo B-Line services do stop at Sunbury, slightly increasing the frequency at Sunbury, in terms of just Metro, it is a very, very poor frequency at every 40 minutes at Diggers Rest and Sunbury. Now time for some travel tips. The first one here won't really save you any time, but hopefully make the journey a little bit more interesting and at least feel a little bit shorter. If you've just missed the next Bendigo service and you plan on travelling on the Bendigo line, feel free to take the next Sunbury service all the way to Sunbury Station, and usually Bendigo services off-peak depart Sunbury Station on the opposite platform of termination a few minutes after the Sunbury train terminates. The purpose of this is just to be moving for a little bit longer instead of be waiting at the same station for a long period of time. Yes, it doesn't save any time technically, but it hopefully makes the journey feel a little bit quicker. This next tip will definitely save you time. If you find yourself at Southern Cross Station during the PM peak and you want to take the next Sunbury service, you may as well just head to platform 14 and take the next Werribee and Williamstown service to North Melbourne, and then switch there for your connecting Water Gardens and Sunbury service. This serves the purpose of a 3-minute journey instead of taking the next Sunbury Water Gardens train at Southern Cross, which actually runs via Flinders Street, may stop at Flinders Street for about a minute or two, and then run all the way via the City Loop. So it's just to save a few minutes off your journey and get home a little bit quicker. This next tip here is if you are needing to travel to either Middle Footscray or West Footscray or Tottenham stations during the peak, either check the PIDs or alternatively just take the next up or down or Water Garden service depending on which direction you're travelling, as those services are stops all, because you do risk, if you do take a Sunbury up or down, you might run express through those stations. Time to look at some future plans / ideas for the Sunbury Line. First up is maybe to build a sidings near Killer Plain Station, maybe just for 1 or 2 trains, just so they can get into the city a little bit quicker for peak services. There is plenty of land there, so it is definitely possible. However, of course, there is a massive sidings at Calder Park, not too far away, but it is in the down direction, so maybe just to get trains into the city a little bit quicker, that is definitely an idea. Next up is known as the ultimate gangway surf between Water Gardens and Diggers Rest, and even Water Gardens or Sunbury for that matter, as the stations are quite far apart and most of the track is a long straightaway. Trains reach very fast speeds, I believe it's about 100k an hour, and as a result do fly through some of those level crossings at quite fast speeds. And not that removing these level crossings would save any time on the journey, it's more just for the safety of vehicles and people around, and also just I guess for the well-being of the drivers. I mean, you know, you always hope as a driver that every time you go through a level crossing that there is no issues whatsoever. So I guess just for the well-being of drivers and also the safety of the community, removing these level crossings would be a good idea just because of the high speed that these trains travel at. That probably needs a whole video for itself, to be quite honest, but that is of course the high capacity metro train takeover on the Sunbury Line that will happen. Of course, some of the changes we'll see is extended platforms, new signalling, being the high capacity signalling, new timetables, and of course the metro tunnel opening. I think HMTs will actually land on the Sunbury Line before the metro tunnel opens, possibly as early as next year, being 2023. So if that is the case, there might be a new fleet change as well on the Sunbury Line, where we see HMTs, Comenge and Siemens running together once again, as by the end of 2022 that will be no longer when the Pakenham and Cranbourne lines become just HMTs. Now to conclude, an interesting story, or rather an observation, and that is that the Sunbury Line is fairly important when it comes to the transfers of retired Comenge. The McConnell Dowyard and North Bendigo workshops require the transfers to be partly on the Sunbury Line. The McConnell Dowyard of course junctions off at Albion, and then North Bendigo workshops of course follows past Sunbury all the way on the Bendigo line. In addition, Tottenham Yard, where trains are being temporarily stored, is also in the Sunbury Line, of course right in between Tottenham and West Footscray stations. So when it comes to the retirement of Comenge, the Sunbury Line is rather important. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. I hope you learned a thing or two about the operation of the Sunbury Line and enjoyed this latest installment of the Ins and Outs series. Hope you enjoyed, and I think we'll leave it at that. Cheers.